Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and for today's video I once again have for you a 7 on Sunday. 7 on Sunday was created by Grace from Cheese Swizzle, and I will leave her channel linked down below, as well as the Goodreads group for 7 on Sunday. What 7 on Sunday is basically we get a topic each week, and then we have to choose 7 usually books that fit that topic. However, this week it's not books I'm going to share with you, because this week's topic is our top 7 most disliked or hated tropes. And then next week it's going to be my top 7 most liked tropes. And I have to say that for this week I had quite a trouble finding 7 tropes where I say, yeah, usually I am not a fan of those tropes. Because towards most tropes I'm kind of neutral. I don't have a lot of tropes that I really love, but I also don't have a lot of tropes that I really hate. Because in my opinion, it always comes down to the story and to the writer. If a trope fits the story, and if a trope doesn't fit into a cliche, and if it's well written, then I will love what you do with the trope, no matter what the trope is. Usually I don't even mind insta-love in YA that much, for example, as long as the chemistry between the characters is there. And if the chemistry isn't there, then you can't save it with a non-insta-love romance anyway. But I still found 7 tropes that I usually tend to be more critical towards, even though I do think they can be done right and can be done well, and they won't be in any particular order aside from the last 2 tropes, which both have to do with death, and for which I won't have any books, obviously. So the first trope, and I don't have names for these tropes, it's just things where I realize while reading them, they kind of annoy me. But the first trope I have is the kind of goody two-shoes hero trope, I would say, where you have a hero that somehow ends up being quite overpowered, and because of that they constantly are scared that they will slip to the dark side or something along those lines, and that because of the power they're going to be corrupted. And the example I have for that is Alina Starkov from the Grishaverse trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I'm currently reading book 3. I just love heroes that kind of embrace the morally grey side of theirs. And I do love it sometimes when you see heroes struggling with what is right and what is wrong, but if it's then connected with, yeah, I'm struggling with what is right and what is wrong because I'm so powerful, and not I'm struggling with what is right and what is wrong because of the person I am, and it's kind of implied that they would be the perfect person if they didn't have that power. That's just something that kind of annoys me and that bores me, and so that's one of the tropes that I don't like. The second trope I want to talk about isn't a trope like the first one where I feel it makes the story less interesting if you have the trope in your book, but it's just a trope that I personally don't enjoy reading because it kind of makes me uncomfortable and kind of gives me discomfort to read the trope, and that is the angry main character, / also a lot of times into this category falls the revenge plotline trope. Because a lot of times if you have a main character that's only out for revenge, that main character then is also constantly angry. However, with the revenge plotline, I do actually have some books that I quite enjoyed that have that trope. So the book I have as an example for this is actually a book that I really ended up enjoying nevertheless, even though it has an angry main character, and that is Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor. I still ended up giving this 4 stars. So the reason I think why the angry main character trope is something that makes me really uncomfortable is because I am very much a non-aggressive person, and I get aggressive very, very rarely, and only very surface level aggression most of the time. And I'm also someone who really doesn't like conflict a lot. And so reading about main characters that are constantly angry and that are constantly in conflict and like in confrontation with other characters just isn't something that I personally enjoy. And so a lot of the times the characters that are constantly angry, even though I love the story as a general, for example in Who Fears Death, I kind of really don't like the main character. Even if I can understand where her anger comes from, and even if I understand that it's completely warranted that she is so angry, and I understand her, but I still don't like her, and I still don't like reading from her perspective. It's kind of a weird thing. And also, fun fact, this trope is the main reason I haven't picked up A Rage of Dragons yet, because I have heard that it's a revenge plotline, and the only way I like revenge plotlines if you then have really kind of witty characters that don't show how like broken they are inside actually on the outside, and that aren't constantly angry. But yeah, that is the second trope I wanted to talk about. My third and fourth trope maybe aren't even really tropes, but they're just things that I start being annoyed at and that I have noticed like happen a lot. They're like patterns in writing and in story building, if you want to call it that. And the first thing is the fairy tale retelling that is based on the Disney versions. And I'm actually holding up Cinderella is Dead for that, because it does both things. Like, on the one hand, there is the mention of the iconic blue dress, which made me roll my eyes so hard, because can we just stop with the Disney versions or the Disney inspirations in fairy tale retellings? I mean, you don't completely have to stop, but let's not have like all our inspirations only from the Disney versions. Let's have fairy tale retellings that completely ignore the Disney versions. But then Cinderella is Dead also does mention quite a few things that are from the original Cinderella fairy tale. And I just think, especially for fantasy, like, the original fairy tales are so incredibly bloody and brutal, and I mean, there's so much you can use in the original fairy tales. You don't just have to go and use the Disney versions. And I'm kind of not tired of retellings. I still love my retellings, but I'm tired of the Disney-fied retellings. And I want more retellings that go look at the original. Then I have a writing trope, writing style. I don't even know if it counts as a trope, but it annoys me, and so I put it on this list. And for this I have quite a few examples. And that is the dual first-person perspective. Now, I am someone, I generally prefer third person to first person. Part of that is because I prefer multiple perspective storytelling to just one perspective storytelling. However, I do not like multiple perspective storytelling, which is a trend at the moment in YA, it seems, when both perspectives, the two perspectives, are both told in first person, because I have never ever read an author that was skilled enough to give those two people very distinct voices, where it doesn't matter that both are written in first person. And so it has come to the point where I'm starting to be really hesitant to pick up books if I hear that we follow a dual perspective, because let's just please not do that. Either you could just have one person as a first person, the other as a third person perspective. You can have both third person perspective if you want two perspectives, or just keep it to one perspective. It's not that hard. Please, stop doing it. You're not that good. Seriously. Trope number 5 I want to talk about is the strong female character that is very prevalent in YA, although it has gotten better, I have to say. And the reason why I hate this trope is because, especially when it's written in YA, I haven't noticed it as much in adult fantasy. I think in adult fantasy it's actually done quite well a lot of times, and this trope can be done well. Like, you can have amazing, badass, kick-ass, strong female characters that don't fall into this trope. But the trope I talk about is typically in connection with the not like other girls trope. A lot of times there's then girl hate in the books, and a lot of times this trope is actually written in a quite sexist way, because the worth of the strong female character is quantified by how well she fights, and how well she can hold up against the boys, and how she's better at fighting than all the boys, and how she's not like other girls, how she doesn't like feminine things, and how she doesn't want to marry and whatever. And a lot of times in the trope, a lot of stereotypically feminine things are very much put down, while stereotypically masculine things are put on a pedestal. And I just want to see more diversity in that trope. Actually, the example I have here for this trope is Mia Corvair from the Nevernight Chronicles by J. Christoph. And I do really enjoy her as a character, for example. Yes, she can fight quite well. She is quite small, she is quite witty. But it doesn't feel, at least to me, it didn't feel while I was reading it, that she put down the other female characters. It didn't feel like she had to prove herself against the men constantly. There are quite a few women in this world actually that can fight, which, by the way, that's a completely amazing way to go around this problem. Just set your strong female character in a world where it's normal that women fight. Then you have like a non-gendered way that she can be kick-ass. It's not something that men do in this world, and that's why she's so great. And yeah, so this is a trope that can be done well, but a lot of times it's done very sexist. And then for the last two tropes that I want to talk about, I do not have any examples because that would be spoilers, I feel, because both of those tropes have to do with death. The first trope is the one I always call the laziest twist of all times. And that's the trope, I do not even know if there's like a name for this trope. By the way, both tropes kind of have to do with resurrection. But that's the trope where you have a character, where the character, you're seeing things from things they died. But the body disappeared. The body was never found. And then 1 or 2 or 3 books later, suddenly it's like, surprise! This character is actually still alive. And this trope has been pushed so far that at this point, if I read a fantasy and I don't see the body anymore, the body isn't burned, you don't have a burial, I won't believe that that character is dead. You're still alive. And like in 1 or 2 books, I'm gonna be happy because you're back, and just the emotional impact is gone. And then the second trope I have with death is just the resurrection trope. I do not like resurrections in books because, again, it takes away the emotional stakes. Because once you have crossed that line of having brought back a character, then every death from that moment onwards won't matter anymore. Because you know that every character potentially will be able to just come back. And there are certainly books where I was really happy that characters were brought back, and I was really happy that characters weren't actually dead, and I was really happy that like characters were resurrected because they were my favorite characters, and I thought it didn't take away from the story necessarily. But I have never read this trope where I found that it added to the story and it's done in a way where I'm like, yeah, I'm actually really a fan of the way this was done in this story. And yeah, that was it for my 7 tropes that I dislike most or that I hate most. Tell me in the comments down below if you can feel me on some of those. What are your most disliked tropes? Next week I will share with you my most liked tropes, my most loved tropes, so definitely tune in again. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!